Bandwidth for this podcast is brought to you by Ideate Software. Be sure to check out all of their great Revit applications designed to increase your productivity.
I'm here for BIMThoughts, and you are too. And thank you so much for joining us. We have an exciting, fabulous, way cool, wonderful, and something else that seems like it should go with this sentence episode of BIMThoughts.
Tubular.
Tubular. Yes, tubular. That was Dana DeFilippi, if you didn't know. And we also have the Karl Storm and a special guest today, Timon Hazell. Did I say it right?
Welcome. You got it. Timon Hazell. Yep.
It's a miracle.
It's
the
a hard
only thing.
one.
I screw names up all the time. You can ask Dana about that. So, Timon, define yourself.
Define myself.
Define yourself.
That's a good question.
I know. That's why I ask it.
I define myself as as someone who really likes to see the industry change, specifically thinking about work, really a connector, an innovator, and in my free time, a sailor and a husband. And those are some of the things I think that probably define me.
Wow. So how do you want to see the industry change? What should change about it?
I think I actually just got off a phone call, and I think as a lot of people who, I'm leading the YourDesk University kind of web series, and along with a lot of the other people there, I think there's a lot of people who are just dissatisfied with the movement of design and technology in that intersection, and how slowly it's moving forward and catching on into the industry. And technology is not, a one answer, kind of like a one button answer to every design problem. But I think that some of the, mundane tasks that exist in design that people didn't go to school for, can be automated and integrated across different firms. And I just really want to see different people from different companies integrating and collaborating a lot more and in depth and learning from each other, so that each step of the way is growth rather than just, tons of people taking the same first step. So kind of like enabling people to take a second step off of somebody else's first step, and then a third step off of another person's second step. So this group of really an industry group wide change. And I think it is happening at some level. So that's how I want to see the industry change. Is this kind of like collaborative group direction.
As long as we're not headed towards the cliff, I'll follow anybody's step.
As a group, I think you self-correct oftentimes. I mean, there's obviously there's a lot of bad examples of where self-correction didn't happen. But I think if one person thinks that they can do all the self-correction themselves, that's often actually probably going to happen less often than if you get a group of thinkers together in mind.
Yes, one person thinks they could change the world, and I don't think that can happen. I think you need a lot of people to change the world. There's too many people in the world. So, do you think that the architecture firms are more open today about sharing ideas than they were, say, 5-10 years ago?
So, are architectural firms more willing to, and engineering firms, are they more willing to share today? Is I think that's the question that you're posing.
Yeah, in other words, are they still do you think that they're in the mode of this is a competitive advantage and we're not going to show or teach anybody how we're doing things, and this is how we're going to win business and be successful? Or do you think they are, hey, let's share this and see if we can learn some more things about it, and see if we can bring the whole industry forward as a whole?
Yeah. I don't know that I can answer that for the entire industry. And as Dana kind of alluded to, I come from the engineering side more than the architectural side. And that's okay. I think our design groups willing to kind of engage in this meaningful conversation that can move the entire industry forward is, I think, how I'm kind of coming at this. And, I don't know that I can compare it with 5 or 10 years ago, but I do think I like the example of email. And someone once told me that email was seen as a competitive advantage. And, it was, I can't remember what company, but internally developed and worked on it. And that was their way of communicating internally. But all of a sudden it became a much better for for them and the communication industry, for email to be something that could be standardized and shared across other companies. And all of a sudden, email didn't become a competitive advantage. It just became a part of the way that people did work. And I think we're kind of getting into this point in technology specifically, just because that's kind of the space where I find myself a lot in. But I think we're coming to a point where, as someone I think used the term earlier today, of there's tinkering that's happening, but then is that tinkering necessarily a competitive advantage? Or is the culture that your company really have, is that your competitive advantage? And some of these technology tools are part of that, but some of them are becoming more standardized. And I think that the leaders are getting to the point to where they're realizing some of this is not a competitive advantage, and it's just part of the way we do design. So they're becoming more willing to share and integrate with those pieces.
No, I think Timon hit it. I think it really comes down to the person in charge of the firm. So what else? What else we talked a little bit earlier about SharePoint, how Walter P. Moore is migrating a lot towards SharePoint. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So actually, I do think that the current COVID crisis did have, it definitely kind of sped it up. But before that, we were moving some of our projects and a lot of our internal reference documents, etc., onto SharePoint. And that has really allowed us to work from home really easily. I basically sync that to my computer, and I can work with those, I'm going to call them quote unquote network locations, as though they're local on my computer. And it's really helped us streamline, our collaboration on general work products that, Revit obviously doesn't work that way. We use BIM 360 for that, but for other products and documents that you're working on and collaborating on.
Yeah, I think we're all in that challenge stage right now of it settling in that this is the way we need to work for a little bit, and not just, hey, next month we can go back to work. I don't think it's going to be like that.
Yeah, and I don't know, Bill, Karl, if either of you guys have worked on a presentation or a Word document with 10 other people actively editing it at the same time on SharePoint, it's a totally different space to be in.
Oh yeah, it is a completely different space to be in doing that and editing and sharing documents and Word documents and things. It's like working in Revit, except you can't see the person do it on the fly. That'd be cool if you could see what they were doing on the fly.
Yeah, that's what to say. Like, we're all working in Revit virtually. You can see people as they're like drawing walls, they're building it and stuff. That would be awesome.
I was talking with Phil Reed one time, back when we could go to conferences. He was talking about how his son, he sat him down in front of Revit to show him Revit and show him the ropes a little bit. And he had his friend do it as well, and they were working on a work shared file so they could work together. And his son asked, well, where's my friend at? Where is he? He says, well, he's over there and he's working, and then he'll save, and then you'll see his changes. He says, no, I want to interact with him and see what he's doing while I'm doing it.
Like Minecraft.
Like Minecraft, right. Where's my friend? And that really hit home when he said that. It's like, wow, that could be the next thing in the BIMosphere, is doing it like Minecraft, but not with blocks.
Just, more like families, blocks, whatever.
Yeah, Legos. Maybe we should just build everything out of Legos.
I am totally on board with that.
I'm down.
Yeah. I have a 5 and a 7-year-old niece and nephew, and I really splurged on Prime Day on building toys.
I bet.
Because I am just so excited to build them. Oh my gosh, my 5-year-old nephew is going to be some sort of contractor or something. He's already, like, he's on board. He wants to build things. He's like, creating all of these awesome things. It's amazing.
I think it does make an impact. I played with Brios and Lincoln Logs as a kid, and my favorite book was a construction one. So, I don't know if those made a difference or if I was just drawn that way because of my interest. But
speaking of interest, did I hear that you're a sailor?
Yeah. About 7 years ago, one of my coworkers invited me out to go sailing, and ever since then, I got into racing and sailing, and it's been a really nice way during the season to get away, to get some silence. Right here in the middle of DC, we have the Potomac River we can sail on, and my wife is my first mate, and together we just go out and have gone sailing quite a few times.
What an amazing factoid. I had no idea about Timon.
Yeah, it's interesting because sailing is both. It's just so peaceful when you get out there and you turn the engine off. And I think about technology all the time, and I'm constantly trying to push the needle, figure out how things could be done better. And then you get out there on a sailboat, and it's just letting kind of go of all of that. Dana, I think you know this factoid, but I think maybe 4 years ago, I decided to go without my smartphone for a year.
I do remember that. That was so weird. I was like, what are you doing with this weird broken flip phone?
And it was in the same way. It's just this moment of being, your smartphone kind of speaks to you. It's saying like, oh, go check your email, go check this notification, go think about this. But a flip phone wasn't doing that. And I was finding like my time disconnected. And I think sailing really connects with that for me, and just the natural aspect about it, and the wind, and there's no vibrations on the boat. It's really, I highly recommend anyone who wants to do it, go and do it. It's really easy to get involved. So that's not what I'm pushing, but definitely go sail.
Well, we all need our out, right? Our out of work, or out our COVID, or whatever it might be. So that's awesome.
Yeah, we're limited individuals.
Speaking of outside of work, you created Dynamo DC, basically, you and John Shippers as well. And now you guys have done YourDesk University, both amazing platforms that I partake in. So thank you.
Thanks, Dana.
What would you say has been one of the biggest challenge in kind of leading these groups and trying to rally the industry in the way that you do?
That's good. Yeah. First of all, thank you, John, so much for joining me on these two adventures. YourDesk University would never be what it is without you and the other people involved. And with that, I just also want to give a lot of credit to Jared Friedman, who is one of my coworkers and who's also just helped us. He really kind of brings balance to me and my ideation side and my creative kind of crazy movement, fast paced, big ideas. And he helps definitely kind of anchor me and help bring those ideas to reality. So huge thanks to both Jared and to John for their involvement. And this semester, Lisa Marie has joined us, and she's really been awesome at helping get a lot of things done. And definitely check out her blog on that. What has been a challenge? I dream big. I really dream big. And I think the challenge has been taking steps forward and choosing a path and moving along that while still dreaming big. And I think it's been a lot of communication. There's been a lot to collaborate and figure out all the pieces. I don't know. I was looking back at my notes from when we started, but the first, I think, 5 or 6 speakers who decided to participate in that, they agreed to do something without really knowing what it was, and took a leap of faith with this group of collaborators. And it was 9 days from when we first pitched the idea to when we were marketing our series the first time. And that just can't be done without a really, really great team all collaborating together. So huge thanks to all those guys, Asan, John Pearson, Kyle Martin. These guys just kind of jumped on and said, yeah, let's do this. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but let's help make this happen. Ryan Cameron and Cesar Escalante, who shared about, his life during the show. So I think that's been a challenge. And you guys host this podcast. It's a lot of work to organize, to do the recordings, and you give up, you choose to spend some part of your life in this way because you want to, I think it's because you want to have an impact, but I'm actually maybe throw that back to you guys. What drives you as you guys do this podcast over and over?
Yeah, it's just to spread information, right, Bill? Share our thoughts.
Sharing thoughts. What drives me to keep going is people say, keep going.
It's all about the community.
It's all about the community. If nobody cared anymore about BIMThoughts, then we wouldn't be doing it. But Seems like when we take a break from BIMThoughts, everybody asks, where's BIMThoughts? So
Yeah, and I'm sure you saw this, and I'm sure your listeners know this, but I saw you guys listed next to 99% invisible, which to me just like really shows to the effort you guys have put into this.
we're that extra 1%.
But it's, you know, it's definitely the community that's driving it. But for me, it's also the stuff that I learn. You know, similar to doing a blog and other things. There's so many things that you learn from it. I mean, you're giving back to everyone in the community, those that listen, those that partake. But you know, there's always that little selfish part inside that says that I learned so much from doing this. The same thing with what you're doing with YourDesk University there, Timon, is that you're giving the greater good to everyone, but at the same time you're learning so much, and you're keeping your sort of pulse on what's going on. It's a great way to stay current. At least my thoughts, anyways.
And Karl, thanks for that. It gave me a moment to think, like, thank you, Karl and Dana. You were also two of those first. I can't believe I didn't list you in that list. But you guys jumped on early. And Karl, you've always been a huge champion for the YourDesk, and really brought together, you know, when we were starting, we were realizing, you know, these conferences were closing or not happening. User groups were finding it hard to figure out how to meet. And I think you kind of helped bring forth that idea of like, well, what if we provide this in a way that the user groups can be supplemented in this way while, you know, we figure out life. So yeah, huge thanks to you guys.
Thanks for letting us be part of it.
And, you know, I know that my face is on things, and I really just can't take a lot of the credit. You know, this actually started as COVID was starting to hit. My wife and I kind of were praying and thinking about really, and this is, I guess, a little more personal, but really thinking about how we could love our neighbors. We'd been married for about a year and a half. And, you know, as we got to like that point in our marriage, we realized we'd started working on how we did life together and what it looked like to love our neighbors. And I was thinking about like my physical neighbors, but as COVID hit, and all of a sudden loving my neighbors meant staying home, and loving my neighbors meant not going in person and doing something. Yeah. There was something there. And I talked to some of my coworkers, and, you know, I'm really grateful, like Dana said earlier, to have, you know, a company where they encourage this kind of thing, and they, you know, they really support it. But they also kind of were like, okay, well, what does it look like to love our neighbors? And, you know, what does it look like to do this? And I just have to say, like, I'm really grateful to be in that kind of a position, and to have the backing, you know. And, you know, we mentioned my previous employer, Silman. You know, they've really helped, you know, me grow over the years. Yeah, I'm just like really grateful for the backing that they also gave, and the people there, really great people.
And I think all of that speaks to the community, like we are kind of referencing this whole time, right? Just amazing the community is to come together and share resources and you know, back us as individuals.
Yeah, definitely. And if you look at the people who are speaking, you know, they put so much energy into the presentations they put out, and they share really a lot from their work environment, from their own experience. You know, the presentation just recently about open source for AEC, like those guys, they're really giving a lot to our group, our industry, just like you guys are.
Well, we try.
So, as YourDesk University grows and expands, one of the things that we've really tried to stay away from has been, you know, 101 level topics. You know, we realize that there's this niche, there's this subset, even the subset of BIM. If I put it in there for a minute, it's not quite fits completely in there, but it's kind of the software innovation focused person, maybe managers of those kinds of departments. But we chose to stay away from 101 level topics. We're choosing to stay away from, you know, modeling and BIM kind of general topics, which there's obviously a larger audience for. But we really want to serve that niche of people who are in the innovation and the side of things. And that can vary from sustainability to machine learning to how you create a culture like that inside of your company. But are there specific topics that you've found, you know, in those spaces, or are there people? I mean, yeah, are there people that you would love to hear from more? And I say that to everyone out there. You know, if you are one of those people, we really want to highlight people who maybe aren't being highlighted, or who have compelling stories to share of this kind of thing. So I guess I'm asking you, Bill, Dana, Karl, but also kind of call to action to others out there.
I think one of the things is not all of us are maybe as willing as others to get in front of a stage or put our names on the list, if you will. Some of us feel more comfortable teaching or in front of a large audience. And that definitely comes with time. I will say that at first I definitely was not that way, right? But it's an interesting niche we're in because we get a wide range of people. We get engineers, we get coders, we get data scientists, we get a lot of people, which when you think of off the top, you think of like high partitioned desks, and they just kind of want to work in their own niche and not necessarily like the most collaborative of work atmospheres, right? At least like when you think of it off the top. So maybe it's like a matter of finding those types of people that, are out there, maybe even that are present on the forums, but maybe don't present as much as we would like them to, and pushing them a little bit more. Because, like I said, it does take a little bit of time to feel comfortable in front of an audience, and teaching in general, getting a sentence together properly, which I still struggle with, as we all know from BIMThoughts, right? What comes to mind is people like Conrad or Jeremy Tamick, the building coder, or some of those really heavy coding guys that we see all the time online, but we don't really hear from them, or see them. They're just kind of behind the scenes doing these awesome things. That's at least when you put me on the spot, what comes to mind. What about you, Karl? You I feel like you have a really large web of people that you converse with and such.
I don't know about that, but I like to think of myself as a curator. Dabble in a lot of things, but I'm not necessarily the Conrads or the Jeremy Tameks of the background. But I know people through conferences, through podcasts and thing, where to get it, where to get information, how to share it, how to get that out there. So that's where it comes from, and I think that's comes back to the fact that our little niche, our little community, is exactly that. We are the community. It's like Timon was talking about, his neighbor. It's like we all have our neighbors from what we do, and we are open to share, and we're the ones that want to get it out there.
There's already been so much given to us. And like you said, Karl, if you go to these conferences and you see people sharing every one of these sessions, a lot of the people who speak and teach and at any conference, or even, I know we're talking about YourDesk University, but same thing for the people speaking there. Like they want to teach, and they want to learn, and they're willing to be a part of that in order to help it move forward, to move the needle together. And I appreciate that from other people and really want to be a part of that with them.
I think it's an amazing perspective to have. I think I am 100% right there with you. Whether that's me trying to figure out something that my electrical engineer needs to do. So I'm, looking up what dynamo and electrical engineering type workflows exist already, or whatever it might be. Even simple little pieces of scripts and, different things like that we all rely on each other for within the forums and different things. Definitely an amazing perspective to have. Bill, you must have something to say. You've been quiet for way too long. I'm getting nervous.
Well, yeah, sharing is caring. We all share. What I've learned over the years is when you stay in a closed environment, which is competitive advantage, we don't share anything with anyone, or we want to get as much out of anyone as we can with giving them the smallest amount of information. You may be ahead of the game for a little while, but unfortunately the game catches up and surpasses you very, very quickly. It's been my experience with companies that are very closed. And companies that are open and want to learn and want to share and great things like that advance a lot quicker. And they also find better people to work with them as well, because everybody wants to work for a great place, right?
Absolutely.
And so I think this conversation we just had just drives that home.
Tim, and so I really love the fact that YourDesk University does kind of play into our niche, and kind of in the same way that the conferences do, right? I mean, you see a certain level or caliber of presentations and certain things that play to a certain audience, in certain education level of audience. But how do we get to that intermediate group of people that maybe is slow to start to get to the level that maybe we are, maybe kind of experts at our level? Do you have some recommendations for resources, whether that's Linda or otherwise, that people can learn these tools, whether it's computational related? Revit, Rhino Inside is a really, really awesome tool that I'm definitely trying to get more into. um, Data science, visualization, all of these tools that we're referring to that YourDesk University is really harnessing within our industry that play on top of BIM, I guess you could say. Where's the point of entry, I
Yeah, I
guess,
think
would
what
be
you're
the.
asking is like, where's the 102? Is that, I think, like the
Yeah.
101s might exist in some of the spaces, and you're seeing some of these advanced topics, but where's the like 102, if I want to call it that, like the level 102?
Sure, like I know how to open Dynamo Node does, but what's next?
Yeah. So before I answer that, with this previous topic we've been talking about, something that really comes to mind is culture. And I think it really leads into this next question. And that's like a culture of learning. And why is, I guess I just want to challenge people who are technologically focused, which, I think a lot of them, are watching, listening to this. But do we think about our culture and the way that we're learning and the way that we promote learning and integration of learning and projects? Because I think as humans, we want to grow. We're designed to grow and learn. And I think that that's really important. And I think that leads into the Where's the Level 102 classes. If I think about like this niche of innovation and software development, I think at the very basic level is, an introduction to visual programming. I would call that kind of level 101. Dana, are we kind of talking on the same terms there?
Yeah, I'd say.
And so I think that the step from 101 to 102, I don't know that it's a specific resource, because I believe there's so much out there about reaching that level. If you were to YouTube or go to the Dynamo forums or search for, basics of Dynamo or a Dynamo class on LinkedIn or Lynda, or you were to go to the Dynamo forums learning or Grasshopper for visual scripting, and I think there's a lot of content to go to the next level. What I've found is that the whole really exists, and maybe it's just because this is where I'm looking, but I see the whole really exists at, okay, I now know some basic visual programming. How do I apply this, or how do I solve bigger problems, or how do I implement this in my company? And maybe I'm seeing something different. So if Dana or Bill or Karl, maybe you
You're
can.
not seeing anything different. I think that class that you give that is organized is going to be a one-on-one class, because you can't teach everything to everyone at the same time. You're going to lose everybody, and you can't have it advanced. The next series of classes is, okay, I think you hit the nail on the head when you say, okay, I know this. Now what can I do with it? And that's where you start to open the eyes of people of how to do something. And so your next classes are, let's learn how to do this task in Dynamo, or let's learn how to do this task in something else. And then if people are interested in knowing how to do that task, they attend the class and they learn the steps it takes to do that. And I think that you can safely expect that people should know how to do the basic part of Dynamo, so that you could get right into the nitty-gritty of the task. And if they don't know it, then they can come back and watch the video later after they learn the basics of Dynamo. Because that's where I see a lot of, well, not failure, but where the beginners get upset because you skip all the stuff, but the advanced people and the intermediate people, they get upset because you're spending too much time on the basics and you're not getting into the nitty-gritty of why they came and what the title of the course was. So you can't please everybody. You're going to get upset people no matter what you do. But as long as you keep to your roots and keep to what the class description is and keep to what the class title is, then you have an argument with the people who get upset to say you didn't run through the basics. It's like it wasn't a basic class. I'm sorry you didn't get much out of it. Watch this one and come back. But I'm like I said earlier in a podcast was I'm starting to see in conferences where you go into Dynamo class and now the instructors or the speakers or whatever we want to call them, the gurus, they expect you to know Dynamo. And you're there and you sit down, you do your thing, and you're going to get lost if you don't know Dynamo. And that's okay. But sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride and see what you can do with the thing. That's what's going on with that. And another thing that popped in my head, young architects and young engineers these days, they have a lot more to learn than the old engineers at their age. Because now they've got to learn how to use the software as well as learn the trade. And so...
And learn now to not let the software take over the design and do design that's driven by the software, because that's what the software gave me. But instead, like, how do I work alongside with the software and potentially tinker and modify and adapt it while still really just trying to focus on good design? How do I not get distracted?
How do I not get distracted by the limitations of the software? And that's been an age-old problem for a long time in everything since AutoCAD. Because in AutoCAD, you said, hell with it, I'll draw it in 2D. And then we'll just print out the drawings and they can figure out how to build the thing. Where in modeling, you need to be able to model that. And thank goodness for 2021. I mean, it's going to be a good year. Autodesk has already jumped right to 2021. And they have slanted walls now. How wonderful is that? Now we can design buildings with slanted walls. Now everything's going to look like we drew it up in SketchUp. I'm still exploring this concept of how much we have to learn now in order to get our work done. And as a employer, and we're not the bosses, we're just people on a podcast, so we're the experts. Not are the employers expected to teach the trade, or are they expected to teach the software, or are they expected to teach both? And I'm starting to think that the employers should teach the trade, and teaching the software needs to be done. Either you already know it as you come in, or you're going to have to spend some time on your own time to get better at the software. But maybe I'm off base there.
I kind of want to again jump back to the 102 thought. There's these micro groups that form. Someone realizes that, we've learned something basic. Let's take this further together. And I think, what was it, like 6 or 7 years ago when I guess it can't be that long. 6 years ago when I learned Dynamo first, the Dynamo forums was a pretty small niche of people that were on there. And then people were wanting to know more, but they weren't necessarily talking on there. And if you look at the history of the Bad Monkeys, they formed because they wanted to ask more complicated questions. They were solving problems together. And so they just started asking each other those questions, and they grew kind of out of that. But I think in some ways that was can I call it a 102 cluster that decided to go to a 400 level graduate level degree class together in this research project that they pursued. And I do think that comes at a personal level, like people choose to be a part of those groups or find or seek people out.
Yeah, and I think they were doing things that the software people who made the software didn't even think it could do. It amazes me when I talk to the people who write the software. When you get to a really hard challenge and you want to know how you can make it work, when they sit back and go, gosh, I never thought of this problem, or that anyone would be using the software in this way, or and And it's to the point where they didn't even think of that way. And now that you've opened their minds that, wow, this software can do that. How are we going to make that work? And that's how new features come to be.
And I think that goes to your second thought of
Uh-huh.
people are now not I don't know. I would argue whether it's like, I think learning trade and learning how you do the trade has always been
Uh-huh.
part of our work. It may have
Right.
changed to a technology software direction, but I think there's always been kind of two aspects. I don't know if you've seen the recent Twitter feed on the frustration that our industry has in learning. And I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a lot of people hurting. There's a lot of people who want to see growth. They want to see change. They know it's possible, but are just at an entry level, don't feel empowered to help make that change either within their company, or maybe the
Mm-hmm.
culture doesn't allow for that. I think there's a lot of reasons why that could exist. But I think, people want to move the needle. They want to see it. But they kind of feel isolated and alone and just feeling kind of unable to see progress. And I think that I think really at my heart is kind of connecting those people and constantly showcasing that people are dealing with the same questions, the same problems as you are.
Sure.
And I think that's what, I know each of you are doing as well.
Now, do you think the challenge is that they don't have the resources, their company isn't giving them the resources and the time? Or do you think the challenge is the software is too difficult and they can't figure it out themselves?
It's a
Or
good
something
question.
completely
Yeah,
different?
I would put it twofold. I think that some of the responsibility lies on companies to create spaces and a culture that can drive innovation.
Uh-huh.
But I think there's also a responsibility that's often left unchecked, and that is that it is also on us to go into. I don't know. I'm missing a word there, but it's on us to say something's not working, to drive that change. But I really think it has to be a marriage of like, if I'm saying here, like in a big employee and employer, but really, or someone who's passionate about innovation and know there's a problem and wants to solve it, to go and take the responsibility of learning that and
Mm-hmm.
growing off of it, and not be handed it to them because leadership said this was important and important. I think it has to be a marriage of both of those.
Yeah. I look back at my early career and advancing in what I've done. And I find that I've always spent a lot of time on my own time to learn the software. But unfortunately, when I was learning it, there wasn't the internet and all that other stuff like there is today, where you could look up things. And when there was internet, there wasn't any good information on it yet. But now it's much different today. But today is going in a different tangent, but I'll get to that in a second. But if you want to advance in any career, you need to invest in yourself. You can't rely on the company to advance you to where you want to be. Now, the company can certainly help you in advance to where you want to be because they have resources that you don't, licenses of the software, computers, and things like that. But it's a give and take. The company doesn't stay in existence in teaching all of its employees how to do the software to the best that they can 100% of the time for every hour of the day, right? The company exists to provide a product to a client that where they don't have the expertise to do it themselves. And so if you don't do the production, then the company doesn't make money, and the company doesn't make money, they can't pay you to do it. So it's a give and take. You've got to be able to invest in yourself in order to advance yourself. And you got to be able to also invest in the company to spend the time to get the projects done. I'm not saying that you should do the projects for the company on your own time and do it for free. That's not what I'm saying. Don't get me wrong. But what I am saying is we can't expect the company to train us and not be billable enough to pay for ourselves and to pay for the other stuff that needs to happen in the company. So we can't lose sight of that.
I think a couple things come from that, Bill. I think the first one is, you're right. We can't just expect the company to do everything. And I think some of that leads back to passion. A lot of the people who've been mentioned on this episode, they became really good at doing these things because they actually enjoyed doing it. So it wasn't
Yeah.
just the fact that they were doing the
They
job.
were
It's
passionate.
They were
exactly. So
passionate. Oh no, they are passionate.
They are passionate, definitely.
but the idea is that they didn't mind spending time. They didn't mind staying at the office a couple extra hours, do something because they were getting something out of it too. The other thing that goes back to content, and something Timon said about the bad monkeys and how there wasn't enough content out there, so they got together and kind of grew on themselves. Way back in the day when I used to teach Rev at the local community college, we had like a little pyramid, not a pyramid scheme, but a pyramid of how we taught. And essentially, for every advanced Revit class, we would teach 2 intermediate classes and 4 beginning classes, because you have to have enough people that have taken the beginnings and want to go to that next level to get content for that intermediate. And then you have to have enough people that have got the intermediate content to go on to the advanced content. So sometimes there's less of it out there because there's less people looking for it, or less people that are manufacturing it because the upside of manufacturing that content isn't there. So which is nice, full circle, brings us right back around to a platform like YourDesk University, where we're sort of going past, as Tim had said, that one-on-one content and taking it to that next level. So it's a resource where we're getting all sorts of bits and pieces from BIM and AEC and taking it to that next level to pique people's interest, to take that next step and to keep being passionate and to learn stuff on the end. I think that leads us back to bringing the plane in for a landing. But before we do, I wanted to ask Timon about, I know we're in the fall semester, I think we're calling it. But what's on the future? What's coming up for perhaps 2021? I may have seen a little bit behind the curtain there, so I don't want to give too much away. But what's coming in down the road for YourDesk University?
No, thanks, Karl. And thank you for your engagement with that. Definitely. I don't think that YourDesk University has arrived, if I want to call it that. I think we're definitely on a trajectory, and I really appreciate the trajectory that the group has been taking, and the speakers are participating in. But I don't know that I can say what 2021 will have. I do believe that we are already looking at a February-March series that is upcoming, and I'm looking forward to the different presentations on that. I know, we've mentioned different topics, and some I think we've done a really good job of covering. Other ones I think we could grow on, but we definitely, want to make sure we're hitting, culture topics around innovation and culture, reimagining workflows. We've talked about doing some machine learning workshops, but really only did one that's even adjacent to that. But I think that the way we see it growing is really still staying and serving the niche that we're trying to serve, but then serving them in as wide of a way as we can. So we've been even looking outside of our industry. We've been talking to some software developers and asking them about talking about Scrum and how to do different types of management practices. We've even talked about, there's some people who have taken sabbaticals recently and talking about the balance for people who are driven and innovation focused of taking a pause and taking a break. And I know some companies allow for that, others don't. Some people are not in, financial abilities to do that. But those are some of the topics, kind of the range of topics. But I really do, at the moment, we're really trying to stay with serving that innovation-focused tech niche, because there's so much that doesn't exist in that space. Once you get past that, then you're a full-time software developer, and there's lots of content. You can go to Python workshops, and you can go C# workshops, and you can go dig in really, really deep. But I think that space, again, I'm just going to say it's between visual programming and software development if you're on the software trajectory. But there's also, managers, and there's people who are in the innovation space that aren't on that, necessarily software trajectory who we're also serving. But we really do want to keep our target group small, but the way that we serve them big.
Well, I think that sounds awesome, and I think I will give you one more chance here for the people that fit into that sphere that we just talked about that maybe haven't been able to reach out to yet. How would they get in touch with you if they have a great idea that they're passionate about that would fit in that sphere to perhaps speak in a future YourDesk University session?
Yeah, great. If you're interested in watching any of these episodes, they're all on YouTube. You can find them at yourdeskuniversity.com, and all the sessions are posted there, including all the previous sessions, along with descriptions and bios. And big thanks to all the speakers that are involved. If you're a person who's passionate and you do want to help move the needle forward, and you have something that you want to bring forward, we are looking for really high quality topics, and that's really key. But at the very bottom of our website, you can find there's a Join Us link, and there's also a Slack channel. So those are two different ways. And a lot of the speakers are on the Slack channel. So if you want to have one-on-one conversations with them, if you want to talk in general with, I think right now we're up to 170 people, which is, by the way, way more people than I ever imagined, or we ever imagined when we started with this. So those are two ways to get involved. And again, just really grateful to the way the industry has accepted this idea of YourDesk University and the contributors who've put into it and made it what it is, because we're far beyond what I think it was imagined to be when it first got started, as something to help connect people during the first shutdowns of COVID in the AEC industry. So I'm really grateful for that. Thanks, Karl. Thanks, Dana. Thanks, Bill, for having me on the show.
Hey, you're welcome, and thank you so much for being on BIMThoughts. We actually did 2 Aubins today, but thank you so much for hanging in there, and we are so glad that we are part of your podcast application. That was a weird exit, but hey, that's what I said.